Tara.
I have a feeling there might be two links going. I don't see people who.
What's the
Might be my PTO link. How do I reshare it? I think Carla might have sent out her own link and then not switched it when Kate gave her one.
If you have it, okay, so here's going to be the difficulty. The difficulty is going to be who's the host.
Right.
Yep.
I don't know how to get them this link. Let's see.
So then, hold on. Let me see if I can. I'm going to copy this link.
Yeah. I think she did one, and then she was going to swap it out with the one that Kate provided her.
Yeah, she probably didn't.
And she probably didn't. That's what I have a feeling. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Where did I get this thing?
All right, I'm sending it to you now.
Were you able to find it?
Yeah, I'm copying the link from.
Okay.
And it's a live link. I'm sending it to you, Tara.
Okay.
Let's try to see if we get a few more people to join us.
Okay. There it is. Right, because there's some folks here.
Okay.
I just don't see my PTO president, and I think she's in another link. Yeah. So I just sent that to her and to my secretary. No, all we need to do is not lose the internet in this storm, right?
No, we're not doing. Don't call that. We're not going to do that.
Shouldn't have said it out loud.
No, it's good luck if you do say it out loud, Tara.
Okay, they have the right link now, so they're heading in, I guess.
Tara, what's your PTO president's name so I can make her a co-host?
Carla Vespano.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Here they are. Okay. Yay.
Okay, it looks like we took care. We had people in two places. Always a difficult thing, but we were able to get through it. So good evening. I am Jonathan Brice. I'm the school superintendent. Thank you for joining Tara and myself as we host the town hall to discuss issues related to our reopening. We're going to begin with a number of questions that members of the Rockwell School Committee community have already submitted to us. And then we'll open it up for other questions that have not been answered. So let's start with,
Dr. Brice, could you just give a quick couple of sentences about what you spoke of last night, what the current plan is? I see a few people were there, but not a lot of people were there.
Yep. All right. So let's do that.
Mhm.
So good evening. Again, yesterday, we actually, as part of the school committee meeting, shared a PowerPoint presentation that will be available. It's posted on our website, or at least it will be posted on our website, that really walk through the 4 key areas for us. First and foremost for us is, as a district, is the safety of students and staff. We want to do everything in our power to make sure that we are putting all of our young people, all of our staff in position where they're going to be safe, that we are going to implement those standards and protocols that the CDC, and I said this yesterday, I'll say it again, before they became somewhat politicized, that the CDC and certainly RIDA, which is the Rhode Island Department of Health, and Dr. Alexander and her team and RIDE have recommended for school systems to implement. Those things think about or require us to think about issues such as how many students can be on a bus. The number is about 24. How many feet apart will desks have to be in classrooms? The standard that we're going by, the gold standard for us is 6 feet of distance apart between desks. The issue of whether or not masks are required or optional. It is interesting. I will mention that we got feedback on our plan today. Overall, it appears that people like our plan at RIDE, but there was some question about us requiring. They don't like the idea that we have required it. I think that our school committee is going to actually have a meeting to discuss policy, and that might be something that we put in policy, which would absolve RIDE of being able to weigh in on that particular requirement. We think it's important that all of our students and staff wear masks when they are entering the building, when they're on buses, but we also recognize that there may be times when people are socially distant and that it would be appropriate for them to remove their mask. And so we just want to make sure that we can facilitate the safe removal of masks at certain times, but with the caveat that, you know, if you move from that stable group or you get out of your desk, you have to put your mask on. And these are things that we believe that we can work with our students, work with our staff to implement. 4 key areas. I mentioned health and safety. We think about issues of operations to include transportation, to include, we think about the academic program. Finally, we think about ways to make sure that we can support this effort because it is going to be significantly more expensive to operate in the models of instruction that have been presented, which are basically all students in school, a hybrid model, and all students from a distance. We actually think that that first and foremost, a priority needed to be placed, and the state actually agreed on getting students that are younger back into school where appropriate, where you can do it safely, students that have IEPs or English language learners into schools because they have a higher priority. And then for our secondary students, the recognition was made that if we are unable to put all of those students back into classrooms at the same time, that we may have some level of flexibility and a hybrid schedule. And that's what we've been able to do. I think that sums up a lot. Oh, two last things. Cozy. So let's talk before care, after care. Certainly we recognize the importance of having before and after care. We mentioned this yesterday very briefly. I'll mention it again. It's going to look different than what people are used to. In previous years, you would have expected that students would congregate in the cafeteria or the gymnasium. There might be 50 or 75 young people, running around after school, having a good time. We are not able to allow that to occur. And so what's going to happen is those students that participate in Cozy will be in a stable group. If they're in a group in the morning, they'd be in the same group in the afternoon. That group would probably be limited to 12 to 15 students. Those students would have to stay in their stable group. And what would happen is they would stay put, and then any type of enrichment activity would be brought to their classroom to them. They would participate in the activity. That individual would leave. And if there was time for another activity, that additional activity would come to them that day. And we really are building that based on Cozy and the guidance that they have received from RIDE for their summer programs. What else? Oh, kindergarten. We figured out yesterday as one of our final decision points for kindergarten that for the first week of school, we're going to have all kindergartners attend school for a half a day. They would attend from the morning through lunch. That would give the kindergarten teachers an opportunity to work with the young people to assess them so that they can establish a baseline and know how to put them into particular groups based on reading ability and mathematical ability. And so that's what we want to do for that first week. It will also help with the adjustment because the first time in school, we know that we expect that during that first week, there will be some nerves and some, it is typical that kindergarten children, in the first week of school, maybe even a little after that, cry in some instances. So that's to be expected, but we actually have a plan to address that. Parents of kindergarten students will start to receive information probably around August the 10th or the 11th, and it will also be posted on our website. I think that is basically the sum total of what we discussed yesterday. I don't know and I've got members of my team here. I've got Dr. Santa, who's the assistant sup for curriculum instruction. I've got Tina Fogel, who's our chief operating officer. I saw George Simmons, our director of facilities, is here. I also know we have at least one board member. Rose is here, our director of technology. We've got at least one board member here, Carly Reish. And with that, I think we're going to start with questions. Diane, you want to start with the first question?
Sure, and I also want to point out that Tom Driscoll is here. He's our
Sorry.
Director of Digital Learning. What we did when we looked at your questions, and thank you for all of the questions, they were very well thought out. There were a lot of them that were similar, so we grouped them together. So I'm going to start by just responding to the questions about what will distance learning look like. And generally, many of you wanted to know if distance learning will look the same as it did in the spring, and how can we provide more consistency in student experiences. So I'll just share our response to you on that. And just want to start by saying at the end of last school year, we had a lot of time for reflection. We did some surveys. We did some teacher focus groups. We met with students and we asked people what worked well about distance learning and what didn't work so well. And from those responses, we developed some guidance that we put into our reopening plan that will go out to all teachers. And we also used it to shape some professional development that Tom is going to do for us this summer and throughout the school year. So what we basically did is we came up with a vision for what we feel effective distance learning looks like. And these are K through 12 expectations, and I'll just read you a few bullets. We expect that teachers will hold a beginning of class meeting or a morning meeting to greet students, to make social emotional connections and explain the learning expectations for the day. Not all teachers did that last year, and we found that those who did, it was truly appreciated by students and parents. All teachers will use either Google Classroom or Seesaw in grades K through 2 as a learning management platform to post daily agendas, assignments, and resources for students. It will make it easier for students who have multiple classes and teachers, and also for families, so you'll know that the information is there each day. In addition, we're requiring that all teachers do a daily, at least one, daily interactive live lesson. So rather than just post assignments, we expect that teachers are actually teaching virtually and using these live lessons to introduce new concepts or to reinforce learning, to check on student progress, and to explain assignments that students will do later independently. So that's something that we want to make sure is happening with all teachers. Also, we're encouraging teachers to do more small group learning opportunities. This helps for students who are ready for a challenge or for those who need additional support. So we're picturing the whole group lesson and then some smaller group lessons for students. And also we are limiting screen time. So RIDE, the Rhode Island Department of Education, came out with some guidance and we have adopted that. So our screen time limit for grades K through 2 is 1 to 2 hours per day. For grades 3 through 5, it's 3 hours. Grades 6 through 8, it's 3 hours. And for grades 9 through 12, it's 4 hours. So we feel that this guidance in conjunction with the professional development will help to promote consistency across classrooms and also make it easier for students and families. The only other piece I will add to that is there was a question about curriculum. Would it be the same for in-person and distance learning? And yes, we will be using the same programs.
Thank you for that. Our next question, and by the way, I think we have, Diane, is it about 40 questions? We lump them together.
There were a lot. Yeah, we did try to lump them together.
So the next question is about in-person versus full distance learning. The question is, for parents that are choosing distance learning, will the curriculum be the same? The answer to that is yes, as what the children would receive in school, or are they covering, or will there be a different group of teachers who are leading distance learning? So that is actually a great question. Right now, we actually are planning on two separate pathways. One path is that what would happen is that students that parents that choose a distance learning option, they would actually receive the same instruction from the same teachers. The difficulty that we think we're going to have is whether or not we have a large number of students in a particular grade that have selected distance learning. If that is the case, then we believe that we would have to identify a teacher that would be the full-time distance learning teacher. And so that we're looking at the numbers, you know, we have an early indication that are a little less than 25% of the student population, parents of the student population have requested it. And so we need to figure out how that will work. Will students have the same teacher year-round if switching between in-school and distance learning? They will have the same teacher if they switch between distance learning and in-school. They would not if, only if something would occur and that teacher would not be available. But it would be our plan to have the same teacher with the same group of students throughout the entire year. Will children doing distance learning the first trimester get the opportunity to meet with the teacher face to face, perhaps in an outdoor setting? Now, that is a great question, one that we had not even considered. And that is something that we certainly can attempt to schedule. I would mention, and we didn't share this earlier, but we talked about it yesterday, that at every school, we have a plan to establish at least one, if not two, outdoor classrooms that could be used by various teachers on a rotating basis. And so that might be something that we could plan. What's next? Is it a possibility that students that are involved in distance learning come in on certain days to have art and music? That is not something that we would offer. We would recognize that art and music would be provided through a distance learning process. What we hope all of our parents recognize is that the traditional, and I explained this yesterday, and I was primarily thinking about chorus at the middle school or the high school, but I think it is apropos at the elementary. There will be some co-curricular offerings where, number one, we believe as a district that it is important for students to get not just the core academics, English language arts, math, social studies, and science, but also those co-curricular experiences, the arts, the music, the PE, the health. It may look different in a distance learning environment, in a virtual environment, but our teachers have been working to ensure that the key concepts are being taught, that student mastery of those concepts will be assessed, and that ultimately that not only are those concepts going to be taught and assessed, but that students will be positively engaged and able to do the work. And one of the best practices that we found last spring was the idea of our co-curricular teachers posting assignments for the week, because by posting the assignments for the week, it actually gave families families and students the opportunity to work at their own pace, knowing that they had the entire week to get the assignments done, and they were able to accomplish that. And so that's something that we would expect would continue. Let's see. If the state of the virus changes and the school department and/or governor have not implemented distance learning, how can we choose to distance learn once school begins? What is that process? So I think here's what we are asking. We will provide parents with another opportunity, at least one more, if not another, to confirm their decision. But once their decision is confirmed, then it is our hope that what would occur is that the student and the family will work through the first trimester to make sure that things are going well. If that is the case, then I actually think we won't have to deal with that particular question. Just like any other parent, if a parent feels like I chose for my child to return to school, something's not quite right, I now need to do something different, I would ask that they reach out to Tara, reach out to myself, and let's discuss it and we will figure it out. I think that is the last question for in-person versus distance. Diane, do you want to answer what will limited in-person look like?
Sure. So limited in-person may come up if health conditions change, and that requires us to lower the group size within schools. So what we're anticipating will happen is that we will divide a class up by alphabet. Most likely it'll be something like A through L will be group 1 and M through Z will be group 2. And each group will go to school 2 days a week. Group 1 would go on Wednesday and Tuesday, Wednesday. Group 2 on Thursday, Friday. And then on Monday, we would have a virtual support day to help students get caught up. When students aren't in school and they're at home, they would be participating in the lesson virtually. So we would be using synchronous teaching, and that would be a teacher using Google Meet, similar to what we did in the spring, so that students at home can participate in the lesson with students who are in the class in front of them. And then we also have a piece of equipment called a document camera that teachers can use to show students what's on the board or what they're writing in front of the class. So that's new for this year, and we think it will be a great way to keep students consistent with their learning. And if somebody has to go out for 2 weeks because of a health condition, they can still participate from home. And also it will help to keep the students connected to one another. So that's our plan for limited in-person learning.
You know, that actually also brings up the issue of stable groups. The state in their guidance has set stable groups for elementary and middle school at a maximum of 30. The fact that they are allowing the group size to be that is not something that we are going to adhere to. We will be much lower than that. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Santa and myself walked Rockwell with Tara, we actually thought that in some of the classrooms, the maximum number of desks that we could get into the classroom that would be 6 feet apart was about 20. And so we know that our class sizes in most cases runs 4 students above that. And clearly it's something that we're looking into so that we can provide what we consider to be the appropriate amount of distance between all of those student desks. And it's something that we will look into. The next question. Let's see, here's the question. Oh, she just got it? All right, so let me slide. What will classrooms look like? Hey, it was a great lead in, great segue. How does the square footage in the Rockwell classroom support 6 feet apart and up to 30 people? And again, you know what, I hadn't seen it, but I gave the answer. We actually think it's going to be about 20 students per class. And so we know that right now, with all of those classrooms, we are expecting that there will be some students whose parents choose the distance learning option, which will drop our number of students enrolled beneath that number. If we find that we do not have enough space for students, we are prepared to put additional classes in common areas. We think that there are just going to be some places in the building that are going to need to be used for additional classroom space. We also are going to have the outside classroom, but in schools that are as well utilized as Rockwell, I think the difficulty for us is going to be if all the students are in the building, that's when we might have to get into a situation where we have to, in some way, potentially have a hybrid or a limited model. But it's something that we'll know once we get a better sense of the parent selection by elementary school, which we're still working through right now. Okay. Diane?
Instructional resources. So we had a few questions. about whether students would be working with paper or on computers, and also concerns about handling books. So this has been an ongoing conversation with elementary principals, and also we've reached out to the school librarians to get information on this. So first of all, we plan on, because of the screen time limitations, we are providing students with workbooks. So we envision that they'll do their interactive lesson on the computer, and then when it comes times to do their work, they would do that in a workbook. And if they're at school, they'll use it there. And then when they go home, they'll use it at home for distance learning. Regarding books in the classroom, so based on the current guidance right now, it's not recommended that students just share books like they normally would, where you have a classroom library and students go up and take books that they want to read and put them right back. Instead, we'll be asking that teachers keep their classroom library closed off for students until we hear differently. And what would happen though is the teacher could send books home with students. And then when they are returned, the teacher would just set them aside for 2 to 4 days. They actually call it quarantining books. And so that way students still have books in their hands, and teachers can still provide lessons that are at a student's particular reading level. So that's our plan for that right now. And again, we're in constant conversations with the librarians, and we'll update you if there's any changes, but that's our plan for right now.
The next question, thank you. The next question is about support services provided during distance learning. If students have IEPs, 504s, or other intervention plans, will they receive face-to-face services during distance learning? I think the best answer I can give you is our plan is that they would receive both. There are some services that we know from last spring that we're able to provide effectively via distance learning. But there are some other things that we are thinking about. One of the questions that we took, I think yesterday, was about whether or not we would allow the students that have selected distance learning to enter the building during the school day to get the services. And we actually think that we might try to structure where there would be some sort of auxiliary building or place where some of our service providers could set up, and they could actually schedule appointments with the individual students, provide the service. They would then, of course, disinfect before the next student came in. And it's not because we think any of the students might be host of the virus or anything like that. It's just the protocol that we have to have. Anytime you have students in one particular group that are coming into a classroom or using equipment that is being used by others, the guidance tells us that we need to make sure that we disinfect. And so that's what we would do. I think the next question is about about recess.
So everybody's excited about recess. I know that's a big question and more important than ever with students coming to school with masks. And so we want to make sure that students are outside as much as possible. Recess will be a little bit different than it has been in the past. So we will be requiring schools to think through how students can be spaced outside. Weather permitting, we will hold it outdoors to get them outdoors as much as possible. They must wash or sanitize their hands before they go out to recess. And this is from the Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines. They will wear their mask. They will stay in stable groups. For large playgrounds, and Rockwell doesn't have this particular problem, but for large playgrounds, we can allow up to 2 stable groups to be outside at the same time. They just need to be spaced 14 feet apart. And I'll let Tara speak in a minute about how she's approaching the recess issue at Rockwell. Let's see, they can have recess equipment such as balls and hoops, but it should be shared just within their stable group, and it would need to be wiped down after. Same thing with the playground equipment. The structures will be sanitized after each group has been out at recess. And then when they come back in, students will wash their hands again before they go into the classroom. We're still expecting a minimum of 20 minutes of recess per day, and strongly encouraging extra time outdoors for students. Tara, do you want to add a little bit about what you're thinking?
Sure. I think that generally we will identify 3 different areas where 3 different classrooms can be outside at the same time. That's how our lunch cycle works. But we will rotate them through playground equipment, basketball court, or grassy area. The PTO, I approached Carla a week or 2 ago, and they very generously offered to buy all our classrooms some color-coded personal classroom playground equipment, a little cart that we can put it on. They're going to cry cut the teacher's name, so it'll be easy for them to bring out hula hoops and balls and jump ropes and things of that nature. And they will just be for those classrooms, and they will be wiped down at the end of the classrooms. So we're hoping to give everybody an opportunity to use different spaces and different materials. The playground equipment, I'm waiting for the guidance on the actual structures, how long it'll take custodians to spray that down. We may be able to use that every other class, because we'll need a period for the custodians to spray it down and a period for it to dry off. But I'm waiting until I get the final word on how that works.
Yeah, and so Tara, thanks for that. We've got George Simmons, our Director of Facilities. George, can you tell us how long, once they spray down the playground equipment, would it take 10 minutes? Would it take 30? I thought it was 10 minutes, but I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, it'd only take about 10 minutes to fully dry. But it
So
has a 1 to 2 minute dwell time, meaning that the effectiveness of what we're spraying only takes about 1 or 2 minutes to react, but it would take about 10 minutes to dry.
Right. So it sounds like we can use that every other recess because we're back to back on those cycles. But we'll work it out to see the most efficient way to do that. Also, many of our TAs have been trained in PlayWorks. They went to a training a couple of years ago, and they have books of games too that they can also go through and identify which ones are, engaging for the age groups and safe to play in a distance way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is related to procedures for school arrival and dismissal. Why was it decided to have all students report at the same time and same pickup time? Will this cause much congregating of students and families? Could you describe in more detail how school drop-off and pickup will operate? Will parents need to be there in person at a COVID screening checkpoint? And how much time will this require? Will there be a long line and difficulty social distancing? Okay, so the answer to all of those questions is yes, yes, yes. Let me start with the lines and social distancing. We believe that if our parents assist us, that we will actually be able to get through the intake process relatively smoothly. And here's why. There will be an app or a link that parents can access through the parent portal, where every morning the parents can check their student just to make sure that they are free of symptoms, and then submit that. Once we have that, we will have individuals that have the ability to pull that information just to see whether or not, if the student is Jonathan Brice, they'll be able to see whether or not Jonathan Brice has, his parents have submitted his form, or whether or not he walks up with a form and says, here's my form for the day. And so that would be the first thing. The second piece is that students that ride the bus, we would check those students, we would screen those students very quickly before they get on the bus with the additional monitor that we are going to hire. Once we have that monitor in place, that person would be responsible for just checking to make sure that the parent has completed the form. If not, they're going to pull out the phone, very quickly call the parent, walk through the symptoms. And if they are able to do that, it's fine. If they are unable to contact the parent, we are going to set aside like the first seat for students to be isolated on the bus, so that as soon as they get to school, they would be taken off the bus and they would be walked inside and placed in either the isolation room by the nurse or in another area where they would sit until the nurse or the nurse's assistant would be able to screen them. We believe that the overwhelming majority of students will come having completed that screening because parents know how important it is. The other thing that parents will not want to do is they will not want their child sitting in a room with other kids who haven't been screened. So this is, right, so I think we recognize that this is both a structural issue that we have to resolve, which we think we have a pretty good handle on, but also something that parents are going to want. Parents are going to want to make sure that they have completed this every single day. It's also critical for me to mention this. As parents, we have all probably at one time or another had a child who's had the sniffles, and we've said, you know what, it's just the sniffles. Here's some Kleenex. Here's some Sudafed. You know, I'm going to give it to you. You're going to go to school. You're going to tough it out. I think with this, what we now recognize is any symptoms, we are asking parents to keep your children at home until they are symptom-free. If the symptoms mimic those symptoms that have been identified that could potentially be COVID-19 related, we would ask that you would check with your medical professional. What is critical in this endeavor is flexibility. One of the things that we're doing is we're purchasing about 3,000 Chromebooks this year. And the purchase of those Chromebooks is to provide Chromebooks for K through 5 for every student, as well as the 6 through 12, which we were already doing. What that's going to mean is your elementary student is probably going to go back and forth with a Chromebook every day. And the reason why is because we never know when there's going to be a day or 2 or 3 days when they're going to need to be at home, but they could still be at home and they could still learn. They could still log in. They could still access the live instruction or the synchronous instruction that the teacher is providing. They could still work on, they could still complete assignments in their workbook. And so this is unlike so last year was unlike any year that we've ever had. This year, we actually have more planning. And so we know those places where we want to expand or build out the academic program so that it strengthens it. I said this yesterday. I don't know if a lot of people really know this, but the research base on distance learning, virtual learning was very sparse because it hadn't been done very much almost anywhere in the world for K-12 or pre-K to 12. And some of the directions that the research gave, we categorically rejected those. So let me give you 2 examples. So the research suggested that you should only teach remedial subjects. You shouldn't provide new content. And we actually disagreed with that and thought, absolutely, we're going to teach new content. It also mentioned this idea of, well, it's really best if you don't do live. It's better if you do taped. We actually think it's effective doing both, but we need to make sure that we get the right dosage. And so based on feedback, Tom Driscoll, our Director of Instructional Technology, has worked with a team of teachers and other educators in the district to gather best practices. And so as a result, we actually think that we now have the right dosage of live instruction every day, social emotional programming on a daily basis, as well as assignments that are listed and workbook assignments, so that students will not do the same thing for 6.5 hours per day. What else? All right, so let's talk about what this is. All right, so we expect that students are going to start arriving at school at about 8:45, and they really are going to have 30 minutes before that first bell. So between 8:45 and 9:15 is the window when students can arrive. As soon as they come to school, they will be able to go into their classrooms. There will be staff there to support them and to get them ready. And so it is because of the length of time that we feel like we will be able to prevent a number of students congregating at one time, as well as the issue of whether or not parents complete the screening. Because if parents complete the screening and then we've got this wide window, we believe that we will be able to get all of our students into the building through multiple entrances, which is something that many people don't know. We're going to have, I think, Tara, are you having 3 entrances or 4?
I have, actually I have 5 altogether. So virtually 1 for every grade level, pretty
Yep.
much, so.
All right, and so we're going to be able to work with that. I've also been in contact, our team's been in contact with local police, so there will be additional patrols and officers available that will help to get traffic back out onto the major thoroughfare as quickly as possible, so that once parents drop their children off, they're able to go. Once the bus comes in, they will be able to offload students. I think the one thing that we're going to see more of likely this year, we're probably going to see an increase in the number of students who are pedestrians and who are walking, as well as the number of young people riding bicycles or maybe a scooter. I hope that answered the question. Let me see. Yep. All right. Diane, health and safety protocols.
Sure. So the biggest question, so we mentioned the screening, the daily screening that families will do. And in addition to that, when students enter the building, they'll be wearing a mask, they'll sanitize their hands. One of the biggest conversations that we have had, though, is around wearing masks. So for the elementary students, especially K-1, we know that it will be difficult to wear masks, but we feel that it's essential that we require everyone, students and staff, to wear masks. And that was some feedback that we received from RIDE today, that we need to be clear on that. And I think our hesitation to be black and white with it is that we want to be respectful of children and children's development. And there may be times when a child just needs to take their mask off. Dr. Brice and I were going around the schools, and we were, busy at it for a couple of hours, and it was an extremely hot day, and we found ourselves like just needing to step back and take our masks off for a little bit. So we're still trying to navigate that language, but I think it's clear to say that we will require masks in the event that students are outside in an outdoor learning area, or if they are at recess and they can be spaced 6 feet apart. So there may be times where we could take the mask off. If they're in a classroom and there's lots of space and they're staying put in that classroom, we will allow them to take their mask off when the teacher gives them permission to do so. We are developing policy around that. We will work with families. If a student refuses to wear a mask, then we'll have a meeting with the family and we'll talk about why, what the reasons are, if there's a medical condition, or if the child has a lot of anxiety around wearing a mask, we'll work with them to come up with some reasonable accommodations. So that's probably the biggest and most important thing right there, is wearing masks. As Dr. Brice said, we will have child-sized masks available if a child comes to school and they don't have a mask. And then the other thing is social distancing, making sure that We help children to understand what 6 feet is, and how to keep yourself safe and apart from one another, and coming up with different ways for students to still interact even though they're not close to one another. In the classrooms, we'll have our desks set up like in a checkerboard pattern, so they'll still be able to see each other and interact, but we'll still be able to keep that distance apart. We also have within our plan, and I won't go through it all, I know Dr. Brice has already talked about it, specific procedures for if a student gets sick at school or tests positive. Same thing for a staff member if they test positive, and this is all coming right from the Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines. So
I'm-
go ahead, Dr. Brice. I didn't know if I missed anything.
No, you didn't. I think I was just going to add 2 points. A point about the mask. And so the direction that we have from RIDE is that we are not to, as schools, we are not to give consequences if students will not wear a mask. That really doesn't work well in a school environment. And what we have to, and so what we have done is we have moved beyond RIDE's threshold, right? So we have a higher standard which says, while you're on school property, when you're in school, you're going to wear a mask. Here are the reasons why. And we believe that because of the education and the information that our nurses, I think Kim is on, Kim McCormick is on here. We really are going to work with our young people to let them understand and to learn about, why it's important to wash your hands frequently, why it's important to cough into your elbow, why it's important to use hand sanitizer, why it's important to wear masks. And so we expect, you can't have a school district with 6 schools and 3,200 students and not have some student on a day not comply with the rule. But we expect that because we are working with them so much that we expect that we're going to have a very high level of compliance with this requirement. And in those cases where we don't, as Diane explained, we would work with the student and the parent to try to figure out a reasonable compromise. But here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to allow individuals to operate in a way that endangers everybody else. So all of our staff will wear masks. We expect all of our students to wear masks, and we will deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I think the other issue is about getting sick at school. That's easy. Kids get sick at school all the time. The only difference in our protocol for that, and there are 2 differences. One is that we will immediately isolate the student in a room that has a bathroom, hand washing facilities, because that's important to keep them away from the rest of the student and staff population, because we actually at that time will not know what they have. We will immediately call the parent. The parent has to make sure that they have someone available to come and get the child immediately. So what does that mean? It means even if you work in Providence, even if you work in Boston, you've got to have someone on your emergency card that is able at a drop of a dime to get up and come get your child, because we will not be able to keep your child in school that day if they are exhibiting any symptoms that have been identified. The other thing that would then be required is once the child is gone, and we can only put 1 child in that isolation room, I think, at a time. I don't know, Kim, if my understanding, I see Tina saying yes. I thought it was 1 kid in the isolation room at a time.
That is our hope, Dr. Brice. We may have a few kids sick at once, but the whole idea is we will hopefully all have nurse techs with us, helping us quite a bit.
Yep.
And in the isolation room. So my hope is if someone comes and has symptoms, I'm immediately able to get them to that room. We're going to clean the area every time symptoms and we send them home, the area will be cleaned immediately before anyone else enters.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then the issue of if a student or a staff member tests positive. And so clearly that is a Rhode Island Department of Health. And typically the reason why we're going to find that out is because the Department of Health will contact us and say, you've had a positive case and here are the steps that you need to take. And so that is a health related matter. Once they have that, they will be the ones that dictate what are the next steps, who that information is shared with, who it's not shared with. And so if anybody remembers what happened over the summer when, or actually at the end of last school year, when we were trying to take senior portraits, we actually followed the health department guidelines. We made a general statement to the community. The health department made contact with individuals that may have come, that, you know, contact tracing, that may have been in close proximity of the individual, and they handle all of that. The only thing we would do is we would put out a general statement, and that statement would include whether or not we believe, or the health department have advised us that school can continue as normal, which is in many cases that would be the situation, or whether or not we would need to take some steps and move to a reduced number of students and staff in the building or full distance. Let's see. What happens? Okay, good question. What happens if my child's teacher is absent? So a couple of things. Number one, we think it's going to be really difficult to get substitute teachers this year. And so we are taking a step where we are hiring what we call teacher fellows. They are individuals who will be assigned to a school for the entire school year. And every school, we believe, is going to get at least one, if not two. So we think for the size of Rockwell, they would probably get one. But if you have a much larger school like Hugh Cole that has nearly double the population, they would get two. And that individual would be available to fill in that particular classroom, as well as teachers on their administrative period. We talked about childcare and COSI. Policy changes. My question is based on the fact that children get sick during the course of the school year. Whether it's strep throat, a migraine, stomach virus, another cause. Now that classes are going to be accessible remotely, are students going to be expected to attend the virtual classes and or be responsible for submitting homework the next day? Yes. Or are they going to be allowed to recover with extra time to complete the assignment? Yes. I feel it will be in the best interest of the students for administrators, teachers, and parents to know what the district's expectations are so that a uniform approach can be taken and ambiguity can be avoided. Well, you know what, can I just say, we want to eliminate ambiguity where we can. I just think in many cases, we're going to have a standard. And here's what the standard is going to really look like. We know that there are going to be moments when students are going to be home because they're sick, but they may be well enough to do work. If they're well enough to do work, we would expect that they do work and that they can log into their classroom at the same time that they're home with their Chromebook and they have their workbook and other materials. There also will be time where students are home and they've got the chicken pox and they couldn't possibly be expected to log in every single day. And so that's to be expected, I think, on a case-by-case basis. But what we want families to know is that we're going to provide the tools and the materials of instruction that if your child is home and has a minor childhood illness that does not preclude them from working that day, it is certainly in their best interest to log in to complete the assignment in real time, because it's less work that they need to make up when they return to school. And that is something that we won't put it in policy. We will put that in regulation or the protocols for this, but we will also communicate that with students and families. That's a great question. Brick and mortar questions. How are the classrooms considered stable when they are exposed to many individuals outside the school setting? What kind of interactions will the kids have that they don't get at home in their safe bubble of 5 friends? All right, so the first question is, our classrooms actually will not be exposed to a large number of individuals. So remember, the state of Rhode Island has set a stable group at 30. That 30 includes students and staff members. And so it is our hope that we're going to limit the number of students to approximately 20 so, and that there may be 1 or 2 teachers involved. Maybe a co-curricular teacher would then come in to the classroom, so that the numbers will be much less than that. No one really asked this question, but I will share. Will we allow visitors and other people into the building on a very Spartan basis? We actually think, that we need to make sure that we are conducting as much business with parents as possible, through the window, not allowing them into the physical building right there, sort of in the vestibule. And so that will be our plan at not just Rockwell, but hopefully at all of our buildings. What kind of interactions will the kids have that they don't get at home in their safe bubble of 5 friends? Interesting question. Here's what I think. I think, and this is what the American Academy of Pediatrics was trying to get to. There is a level of social emotional engagement that students get from school that even in their circle of 5 friends, they are not getting. It's always great to hang out with your friends, the folks from your neighborhood, but school, you get academics coupled with a larger peer group of your classroom, and you get your teacher. And one of the reasons why we want to require morning meetings is because as Diane, Tom, and I, because we're on the academic side of the house, as opposed to folks that are on the operational side like Tina, Rose, and George, when we went around and popped into classrooms and saw the interaction, we actually believe that what we saw was teachers building a sense of community, and that would be something that you might not get in your bubble with only your 5 friends. You're building community with a teacher that you care about, and that is helping you to learn, as well as all of the other students in your classroom. Why can't we stagger the classes so less kids are in school at the same time? I think, so that's an interesting question. Someone mentioned that the kids are going to feel less like going to a prison. First time I've heard that. I don't think anybody would think that Rockwell is going to feel prison-like. It is going to feel less open than it has in the past, but in your classroom, you're going to be able to continue to learn and to have a wonderful time. Students are still going to have recess. Lunch will be in the classrooms, just because it's the safest way to provide lunch. And we've already worked with Chartwell's, our food service provider, and so they're on board with that. Can we, or have we thought about having fewer kids in school at the same time? We actually have not. That was not an option in the guidance that we provided, and it was not a consideration at the elementary level. Some districts plan some districts plan in our state call for distance learning on Wednesdays to clean all buildings midweek. Is this something BWRSD plans to also do? Right now so that's feedback we got on our plan. I'm actually, I don't know how I feel about it yet. And so I still need to sort of process what they're saying to us. I think our plan has a real focus on academic engagement, but first and foremost on safety, the safety of students and staff. And so I feel like we hit the right, that we have the right dosage of where, you know, there are things that we're just not going to give on, and safety of students and staff. We're not going to give a quarter on that. There's not going to be any gap between what the state requires and what we do. I think when it comes to the academic decision, I don't think it's in the best interest of students to have a distance learning day every week when the entire district isn't in distance learning. And so I think that's where I am. I still need more time to process before I meet with our team tomorrow morning. I don't know if Diane or Tom, you guys have an opinion on distance, a distance learning day every Wednesday.
I think there are pros and cons. One of the things, that we worry about is keeping a consistent schedule. So I don't know, there are a lot of considerations, a lot of different ways to look at this. Tom, any thoughts?
I mean, from my perspective, I think the quality of the distance learning is going to be much enhanced this year. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the path that we take to do it every Wednesday. I mean, it's a consideration, like you said, Diane, and I think we could do a good job of it, but we just haven't decided at this point.
Yep. Thanks for that. We've got a couple of questions around health and safety protocols, and then we're going to open it up to everybody else. How comfortable are teachers? How comfortable are the teachers in feeling safe in the school and providing children with a solid education? I think it's a case by case decision. I think so let me answer a different question, because I think you would have to ask individual teachers. Do I think teachers are going to continue to do their best to work with our young people while at the same time keeping themselves safe and helping students to be safe? I think the answer to that is yes. Is there a reason that we are not telling children who their teachers are before the end of the school year? Absolutely, because this is so up in the air. We absolutely don't know. And it is not as simple as just saying, you are a third grader, here are the fourth grade teachers, here's the class you're going to be assigned to. We knew that in May, as we were starting to think about our reopening plan, and that's why we didn't make that decision. We will share information with all students and parents in August as to who their teachers are based on their decisions, either distance learning or non-distance learning. And so we'll make sure that we deal with that. What are the expectations for TAs as it relates to Google Meetings and supporting the classroom teachers in these meets and throughout the day? One of the things that Tom Driscoll is working on is to ensure that our TAs have the skills, and they jumped in and did a great job last year. We gave them loads of PD. We're going to provide more so that they can really be there to assist students in small groups or in large groups with the teacher. I see a question about, will Dr. Brice meet with the Rockwell principal to ensure progress and advancements, hold on, what is this, are being met? How often will these meetings take place to ensure accountability? That's a great question. So let me just say, I don't think any of my principals ever feel like I'm not accessible and around. And what I try to do is let them lead their buildings. They're really good. Tara's really good. And my job is to come in, you know, just pop in and see what the great things that are happening and ask questions. And I do that on a frequent basis. Not so much that I am, and I felt this way as a school administrator. I don't need people in my building so much that I've got to walk with them and they are distracting me from the work. Tara has a lot of work to do with all of her teachers and the teachers with all of her students. She doesn't need to spend her time walking down the hall with Diane and myself. Are we there? Absolutely. And no one has ever, I think, accused us of not being, you know, I don't want to say omnipresent, but very present. But I think there's a balance. You don't want to be there so much that it is taking principals away from being able to spend time in classrooms. And frankly, every time I show up, that's where Tara is. She's in the classroom. Other questions about the principle of logging into Google Meets to monitor, supervise, evaluate. I think one of the things that we are working on this year, so just like we worked on a couple of things for students. And so one of the things that we're working on for students is students have to get up, they have to turn their cameras on. Last year, what we found, and we realized it too late, is that there were some students that would just log in, but they wouldn't turn their screen, they wouldn't turn their camera on. And so we don't know what they were doing. We don't know if they were lying down in the bed. We just didn't know. So expectations this year is that they have to do that. And that was feedback we received. Other feedback we received was from parents who said, I've got 2 kids in your district. One is in this grade and in this building. Another is in a different grade in a different building. And what we see are two vastly different structures of the day. Some teachers are, you know, all they're doing is posting assignments. Other teachers are making short videos. Other teachers are doing live Google Meets, and some teachers are doing all of the above. Well, what we want is for teachers to do all of the above. And so we are working with them so that they are building out their portfolio of activities. But here's what we're not going to do. What we don't want to do is we don't want to mandate that, okay, teachers, every single day you have to do X. That's not what we want for professionals. What we want is to give them enough latitude so that they can build it based on what they're teaching, but with the recognition that live instruction and meeting with your students at least once a day is something that we think is absolutely a requirement. And so we'll work through that. And then for administrators, Tara, myself, Diane, Tom, all of us folks on the academic side, we are absolutely committed to visiting classrooms and seeing what is happening on a daily basis. And can I just tell you, it is really hard. So Diane and I had access to every classroom in the district. And our goal was to visit every school and at least one classroom every day. Can I tell you we failed? Like there's just so much, but here's what we do know. We know that, and this is again why you have to let people do what they need to do. Tara has responsibility for Rockwell, so she doesn't have responsibility for the other 5 buildings. So Tara being able to get into classes is something that we know we're going to see. Whereas when you've got the responsibility for every building in the district, other things come up. Does that absolve me from getting into classrooms? Absolutely not. So it is something that we really are going to try to work and to, you know, at least carve out 30 minutes a day, every day in classrooms. And if we have a distance learning option, which it looks like we're going to have because of the number of parents, that will be something easier to do than having to jump in the truck and visit different schools. Transportation.
I just want to add one more quick thing. that
Go
we
ahead.
learned from our experience, and maybe parents realize this too, or not. I know some students did. There's a notification within Google Classroom that allows you to shut the notification off. We must have had, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of calendar invites and assignments due that showed up on our calendars. And I know I missed a lot of assignments. So, but it wasn't until, you know, a good month in that I realized that I could shut that off. So
Right.
I just thought I would share that.
Exactly. It was amazing. Transportation, we are happy to support the no bus transportation unless absolutely necessary. However, there were 13 children on our bus and he was the last stop. I assume this bus was, or will no longer be going through our neighborhood, needs to be redirected to other schools or areas that have a greater need. How would you control parents requesting bus transportation for convenience rather than absolutely necessary? Well, I think first and foremost, we're going to ask the question, and we're going to have to go family by family and check whether or not they absolutely need transportation, so that we can get our large number, and then we can work on trying to build match student and family requests with available capacity, and we will do that. Here's what we know. It's just not a normal time. It's not a normal year. And because of that, we are asking parents where possible, if they can drop their child off, if they can carpool, if they live close enough where, you know, maybe they were thinking about letting their children walk. These are all considerations that we would ask parents to at least think about. Can I just say with that, let's open it up. It's 7:17. Here's what we're going to try to do. We know that I think we scheduled this for a while. These things usually kind of take about 2 hours or so. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to open it up for questions. And Diane, Tina, Tom, Rose, George, myself, along with Tara, are going to answer questions that you have. And so if you look at the bottom of your screen, we want to see if people want to, if you go to where, if you raise your hand, I've got a couple of people raising their hand right now. The first person I have is Maria Walker. Maria. All right, I think you're unmuted. All right, we can't hear you, Maria. All right, hold on. Maria, go ahead. Maybe it's your sound at the bottom.
She is unmuted, Dr. Brice.
I know, I'm looking at it right now. Maria? All right, we still can't hear you.
Should we go to someone else and then come back to Maria?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. All right, so let's go to, I've got, all right, I'm just gonna do this in order. I've got Elizabeth Lutz, Joelle Fontana, iPhone 2, and then Kate Balastrak, is it Balastrakia or Balastraki? And then Lindsay Kitsko. All right, so let's go with Elizabeth Lutz.
Okay, I'm unmuted, right? Yes. First and foremost, a quick thank you to all of you for basically restructuring our entire school district over the summer. I know that you have worked so hard, and I'm sure there's been scrutiny and praise alike, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you.
So the masks, I just am very concerned with the second grader that they don't understand. And I did actually email this to you, Dr. Brice and Tara, but knowing now that they do have to wear masks all day rather than just inside the building, and it sounds like they will have to out at recess. It's just a very serious concern I have that they'll somehow be monitored or made aware. I've heard endless stories from nurses who've been in masks on long shifts and they don't feel well. They just don't feel well. They have headaches. So I just need some peace of mind that we're not hurting our children because we're trying to keep them very healthy and safe.
Yeah, Elizabeth, so again, thank you for that. And just know we've got a great team here that are working, parents and administrators and teachers, and folks are just sending us emails and asking really good questions to help us think through this process. I do not have a good answer for you. I think Diane and I know firsthand, having been in one of our classrooms or multiple class day, after, can I just say, it didn't take long for us to just be like, who, right? You want to take that mask off. And that is why we built into the protocol classroom, when you're 6 feet apart from other people, that we absolutely, can people still hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, that when you are 6 feet apart from others, that would be an opportunity for you to remove your mask. Teachers are going to be instructed to give students that option. And so I don't want you to think that we have an expectation that our students are going to sit in class all day for 6.5 hours and have to wear a mask at all times, because that's not the case. But when they get up to move, when they get up and they're in the hallways, they would absolutely have to wear that mask. It wouldn't be until they sit down again in their seat and they are socially distant that we would expect that they would have the option of removing their mask. And I do worry. Can I just tell you, I worry about all of this. So I don't want anybody to think that I feel as the superintendent that we've got every T crossed, every I dotted. I can tell you that this is our best thinking, and I think we put that in some communication that we put out. It's our best thinking at the time that we wrote it. As we get more information, we will adjust and revise to meet the needs. But I do worry about our little guys and girls, and students and them wearing masks. So Mom, just when possible, we're going to be able to try to get those masks off of them and get them some fresh air. But we have to do it when we think it's safe.
Okay.
Joelle Fontana.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, foremost, I want to echo what Elizabeth said. Thank you very much for all the efforts that the whole staff has been putting in place for a successful 2021 school year. And also bravo for the quick response and the bang up job I think Rockwell did, especially for, for March to the end of the year.
Yep.
And so greatly
Thank you.
appreciate that. I have just a follow-up to one of the questions that you answered and then a new question. So my follow-up question is, you had mentioned about distance learning. Children may be assigned to, let's just say, a third teacher that may not be in the Rockwell school system, if I understood that correctly, right? Depending on how many children opt to be in distant learning. So that's kind of like a whole nother group. So if those children decide, let's just say everything's great and they go back to school the next trimester or even the last trimester, where do they go? Because they're not all just Rockwell students. Where do they go?
So you know what, it's actually, that's like the perfect question. We would then we hope at some point that this is all over, that we all wake up, it's been an absolute horrible nightmare, and we can get back to normal. At that time, we would expect that the number of students in a class would increase and that we would be able to put them back into a regular class at Rockwell, right? So the real issue is that at Rockwell, we've got to get the class size down to about 20 students when the class size is running 22, 23, 24. That's where we are.
So they could potentially get a different teacher if they go back to the school setting.
Yeah, so let me clarify. So if you have a third grader and you opt for distance learning, could your third grader be assigned to the third grade class, one of the third grade classes at Rockwell, and that is their teacher? The answer is absolutely yes. If, however, we find that we have enough students to have enough students and teachers to have a completely separate distance learning class, that also might be an option for us. And right now, we just don't know because we have not sort of parsed all of the numbers. So we have a good sense of, is it one student? So I will tell you, it's probably going to be an over or under for us. If there are only 2 third graders at Rockwell that want distance learning, we're probably going to assign them to a class. But if there are 10 third graders at Rockwell that want distance learning and there's another teacher available, we would probably assign them to a teacher, right? Just based on the number of students that we're now dealing with would need a separate teacher. So that's probably how we're going to figure this out, but we won't know for sure until we actually have the grade by grade, school by school numbers of distance learning request.
Okay. And then my other question is, it's kind of silly, but we know coughs, sneezes, it travels more than 6 feet. If someone coughs or sneezes, it's more than 6 feet. So they're in their stable groups in their classroom, 6 feet apart. Kids don't always cover well. Sometimes adults don't either. They also get sick in the classroom. I just foresee this like total pandemic chaos, everyone running around screaming, grabbing the Lysol. How is that going to be handled?
Okay, so I do think I saw Kim, she's still here. I think first and foremost, it is working with all of our students. We're all parents, we're all educators. We understand, just like you said, sometimes, you don't really cover your sneeze well, or you cough into your hand when you were supposed to cough into your elbow. That I think teachers are going to work with students on. Those are things that our nurses and our nurse techs are going to work with students on. We absolutely are going to address it. There's going to be an abundance of cleaning materials. I can tell you that our cleaning, that we have increased our budget for cleaning and disinfecting materials by, I think, $111,000. So are there going to be wipes in classrooms? There are going to be disinfectant wipes everywhere. Are there going to be paper towels and spray bottles? Absolutely. Our hope is that through education, all students know to cough into their elbow, sneeze into a tissue, all of those things, to use and to practice good hygiene, wash their hands frequently. I didn't mention it. We need to put this out. Our plan is to have our students wash their hands. We think somewhere between 4 and 6 times a day, right?
Dr. Brice?
Structured hand washing, unless Kim tells me something different. Kim?
So Dr. Brice, that's a great point. I just want to reiterate to all the parents that not only are they coming in and sanitizing, at the beginning of the day. They're doing it before snack, after snack, before lunch, after lunch, and as well as recess. We're gonna, the nurses work hard with upper administration to get this plan, this time as part of the plan for all children. Also, the nurses are going to do a great deal of education prior to entering of school with not only students, obviously, but parents and staff to help them understand this more. And most importantly, I just want to remind people that although we have COVID, the nurses have with asthma, allergies. So kids are going to cough. Teachers are going to send them because they're concerned. And we will have to assess them with our nursing knowledge that we have to make the best decision and communicate with our staff, which I know I do often, to ease everybody's mind, if that makes sense.
Cool. Thank you, Kim. Next, oh, well, hold on. Let's see if do we want to go back to, I'm looking, was it?
Mrs. Walker.
Yep. Maria?
Mhm.
I don't know if she's still there. All right. Let's go with iPhone number 2. iPhone number 2.
Hi, Dr. Brice. This is Chris McMillan. I have a third grader at Rockwell, and I do want to say thank you, just as Elizabeth did and the other mother did, for all you've been doing for communication and transparency, and to you, Principal McAuliffe, as well. It's been really phenomenal. My question is around additional social and emotional support for the elementary school students. I think being out of school, away from their friends for a prolonged period of time could have some pretty tough effects for them, and it could be challenging for them to articulate some of what they're feeling. I was wondering if there are any plans in the curriculum to have Mrs. Hayden or Mr. Mike come in and talk with the kids about how to articulate what they're feeling, or if they're anxious, or if they're stressed, or just help them kind of cope with some of the things they might not have been able to put into words.
I actually think there's going to be even more than that. So certainly, I think the social worker, the psychologist, Mike and Laurie will be available and will be able to do that. But I think one of the things that we realize is that as a district, we need to strengthen, and I mentioned this yesterday, what practitioners call tier 1 supports, or the foundational supports for all students. So we need to make sure that all students pre-K through grade 12 have designed intentional social emotional learning supports. So what do they look like? Some of them are as simple as character education, but some of them really are about mental and emotional health, and there are curricular assets that we are looking into to strengthen and to provide teachers with the ability to teach those components. Now, here's where I'm going to say this, please, no one throw tomatoes at me. I have a belief, and my belief is that we don't get high levels of academic performance from young people that don't feel good about themselves and don't feel engaged. And I don't want people to think that I want to create sort of like this touchy-feely environment, because I don't. But what I recognize is that being a child is difficult, right? We wish it were as simple. We wish that everybody had a great childhood and people never had any issues to deal with. I'm just going to give you 2 issues that I think all children deal with at some point. So all children today are dealing with the issue of social media and dealing with, well, I don't know if people like me. I don't know if everybody thinks I'm, a good person or thinks I'm attractive or whatever. Social media is absolutely the worst thing for K-12 education that's out there. It is absolutely a pain and a problem for us. So we have to combat that. And how you combat that is by teaching students what friendship looks like. You know, here's a friend. Well, how do friends treat you? And what do friends say about you? And right? We have to teach young people how to recognize when they are being treated well, when they are not being treated well, so that they can be advocates and have agency and remove themselves from those situations where they're not being treated well. The second issue are just general life issues. How many students do we have whose parents have gone through divorce? How many students do we have who have lost a loved one because grandmom died? How many students do we have that are dealing with the loss of their favorite pet? So there are things that happen to young people that as adults, we have to help them learn to manage and to cope. And I would argue that, yep, do families teach it? Absolutely. But we know that all families don't teach it, and we know that all families don't teach it in the same manner. I'll give you another one. Just one of my personal pet peeves is parents that tell their kids, if someone hits you, you have my permission to hit them back. We actually don't want that to happen, right? We want students to learn how to peacefully resolve conflict. We don't want one student hitting your child. We don't want your child to feel compelled to have to hit them back. And so I think, to your point, that is why we want to teach what we consider to be foundational social emotional concepts and strategies to our young people. And here's what the research tells us. I mentioned it yesterday, I'll mention it again. We should put a link on our website, CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, the Collaborative for Social Emotional Learning. They're out of Chicago. They are the gold standard for social emotional learning materials in K-12 education. And they have research on their website that indicates that schools and school districts that implement curricula that has a strong social emotional component see increases in English language arts or reading and math test scores that occur almost immediately and extend for a number of years, and that those skills are skills that young people can take and use over a lifetime. And that's what we want. We want young people to grow up and to know how to positively interact with each other, to positively interact with their peers, not to make people feel bad. And I think social emotional is not, now here's the danger. The danger is that you can focus on social emotional learning and not focus on academics, so the kids feel good, but they haven't learned anything. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, we want students to grow up and have positive identity. We want them to feel good, but we also know that there are times when they're not going to be so happy. And we need them to recognize that this is a momentary thing, but they control their own happiness and that they can work themselves out of it. That's what we're talking about. And we would do that while also strengthening our core academics. We believe the two together are going to make for well-rounded students that are nice people and very successful academically. I hope that answered your question. Maria, you ready? You ready to give it a try? I don't know. Okay, hold on. All right. Maria, you ready to give it a try?
Can you hear me?
We got you.
I was unmuted by the host before, so I couldn't get through. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. One of my questions was, do we have a time frame of when we know how the school will open? Whether it's hybrid, distance learning for the first trimester, or fully on board with everybody going to school? Do we have a time frame for that, or it's still up in the air? Just kind of curious.
So at the elementary level, you really only have two options. You've got everybody's coming back or we're going full distance. The issue of a limited, which would reduce class sizes to about 15. We really don't think that's going to be an option that's going to be implemented at the elementary level. We think that if the health indicators are what we think they're going to be when the governor makes that decision on or about August the 17th, we think that elementary students are going back in our district and around the state for a full return for elementary. At the secondary level, we have already written in our plan and it has been reviewed and okay, well, they don't really approve it, but they reviewed it and they did not flag it. So we have a hybrid model where our secondary students will receive 5 days of in-person instruction over 2 weeks. 1 week, the first group A through L, and will be in school 3 days 1 week, 2 days the next. The days when they're not in school, they will distance learning with their classroom teachers. And then the other group will switch. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, and I know we talked about Cozy as well. Will that be available for
Cozy
the
will be Cozy
regular time?
Well, it will change the time. I don't know if Tina, you want to answer that?
Sure. So Diane and I have been working with Amy, who's been phenomenal in this endeavor and is running the summer program right now. And it's been a really nice microcosm of what we believe school will be, because even though it's a smaller amount of students, she's some of the policies and procedures that were originally put in place have been tweaked, because sometimes things look great on paper that don't necessarily translate. So it's actually been really nice. But we've discussed, obviously, I know for Rockwell, it's not a huge time change, but it is a time change. So we've discussed knowing that that's going to be a burden on parents and that some parents cannot, wait till 9:15. And so we've discussed having Cozy starts anywhere between 6:30 and 6:45. We're working on staffing. So we would have morning and then we would have afternoon. And our understanding is based on the dismissal time, it's generally about the same amount of time dismissal of the school till about 6 o'clock. So we're working, Diana and I are working closely with Dr. Brice and Amy to put together plans. I believe she has a webinar tomorrow with the Rhode Island Department of Health to get a little bit more about guidelines and what fall childcare looks like. We are also having a conversation about whether or not there can be some distance learning support for those students, during that Cozy period of time. So we are working towards a plan and we do want to support parents and understand that they need that just as much as we want to offer it.
Just to add one more point, we're also looking at the possibility of offering childcare on the monthly professional development days. So Amy's looking into that and coming up with a budget for us for that.
I think that would be huge. That's a huge win for parents.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure whether to set my daughter up with, scheduling for the bus or considering Cozy, which we normally do. And right now I'm working from home full time, but my husband's working outside full time. So we're fortunate for that, but it's trying to figure out what to do with her. So my daughter in Rockwell. So thank you again.
You're welcome. I see Kate.
Hi, thanks for hosting this evening. You did answer my initial question about sitting at their desks. They can take their masks off, correct?
Correct.
Yes, awesome. Okay. And then I was in the wrong meeting. Sorry. 6 feet apart, right?
6 feet
Sure.
apart, yeah.
And then I was in the wrong meeting initially. My son's going into kindergarten. Was there going to be an orientation? Did you ask? Okay.
So we actually didn't answer the orientation piece. Let me just go over everything that we've made a decision about kindergarten. We made it yesterday morning, our final kindergarten meeting. So a couple of things. Number one, the first week of school, kindergarten students will attend school for the entire week, half a day. They'll be there in the morning through, they'll have lunch and then they'll be dismissed. The focus of that first week will be for our kindergarten teachers to work with them to complete the assessments and to be able to get a picture of where the students are. Based on that, they will then transition next week into a return to the building every single day for the entire day. But we think it's a good way to work them in and get them acclimated and feeling comfortable. In terms of orientation, we also made a decision. Usually we do like one district orientation. Made a decision yesterday that we're gonna do orientation at every school. And the only difference is that, you know, every school is a little different. So there'll be some slight quirks, but there'll be a district PowerPoint. There will be district staff. I will be there as well. And, you know, probably what will happen is if they're on the same night, Diane and I will split and she'll do two, I'll do the other two, just because we're on the academic side, along with some other staff. And we may even send Tina out along with Ed to cover the other two schools. So we'll work that out. But one of the things that we know is that as a kindergarten parent, I got to tell you, even though my oldest daughter is 20, I still remember the first day of kindergarten and the tears. They weren't for her. I don't know who they were from. I'm not going to share that. But I think what we want to do is build a plan and then share the details with all of our kindergarten parents, probably early next week, just so that you know, all right, here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to happen. Your babies are going to be okay with us, and we'll walk you through the process.
Sure, that's great. I mean, I feel like I have just regular kindergarten questions that, regardless of COVID type of thing. So that's perfect. Thank you. And then the very last question is, are we allowed to does a parent have to be with the child, or could, like, you know, we have neighbors that also go to Rockwell. Could one parent be taking 4 kids to school that are not siblings, as long as the parent has done the online verification?
I mean, the answer is yes, but I don't know if Tina wants to give a more detailed answer to that.
No, I think, you know, we are encouraging those parents who can carpool, or, you know, we've discussed in the good weather walking buses or riding bikes to school. We've discussed working with Carly's wellness subcommittee about, you know, tying these initiatives with, you know, health and wellness. And so, no, we would have no problem as long as the students were screened. We would probably want to, you know, ask that whomever was responsible for the carpool that day knew that when the kids got in the car, they were all screened, because we're really trying to ensure that, you know, instructional time is not taken away for doing routine screenings. We know that there are going to be parents who forget to do the screening. I'll be honest with you, we go into the office and we're required to do a COVID screening. And there's been 2 times so far that I have forgotten, and Ellen, who is one of our nurses, has teasingly called me on it, but she's right. And so I have the app up, you know, I put the form up on my phone as I drive in, and when I get in the parking lot, I fill it out quick. But that, I guess that would be the one thing to carpooling, is that we would ask that there's a concerted effort, and we all really try to make sure that those self-attestations are filled out. But other than that, we would encourage, you know, families working together and getting kids to school if that was the way that they felt was best for their students.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Our last hand raised that I can see is Lindsay Kitchen. Lindsay.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So there was, you know, a lot of talk about masks, and there was some mention earlier, you know, about understanding kind of cognitively where these kids are. I do have 2 girls at Rockwell. I worry a lot less about my 4th grader than I do my very young 1st grader who is not even 6 yet. So my question is no matter how much I'm teaching and I am reiterating, and she can probably list every social guideline, social distancing guideline there is, her ability to act on them is still somewhere. And I will tell you, there's no greater fear in life than having a child that sucks her thumb in a pandemic. So, you know, so I do find the chewing on the mask, you know, and it's a mixed bag, you know what I mean? Because you're really trying not to turn around in consequence. But knowing that the science is still very all over the place, is there any consideration for face shields in the school setting as opposed to a mask?
So, all right. So so great question. And let me start by saying, I think the issue of face shields are just that. Face shields do not provide the level of protection that masks provide.
Right.
But I will tell you that we are working with a local manufacturer to do, he's building actually prototypes of plexiglass or some sort of hardened plastic, translucent, you can see through them, dividers that we would put into some places. So that might be one thing. The other thing that we are thinking about, and I said this yesterday, half jokingly, so we have been focused on reopening probably since mid-May, knowing that at some point this was going to come up, and collecting resources and articles from the Globe, the New York Times, Time Magazine, any place we can get them that showed people in different school systems and different countries and some of the things that they've done. I mentioned it yesterday, we laughed, but the more I think about it for our littlest kids, so the floaties, right, that I think it's in South Korea, they actually use the floaties, they attach them to, I guess like hats or something, and it's an easy way for kids to remember to maintain social distance. So I do think in some ways we need to help young people maintain social distancing. I think for kids that are having a really difficult time, the younger kids, we will have to think about those partitions in their classrooms. And that's something that we will look into. I will just share with you that we are willing and committed to doing everything in our power to keep kids as safe as possible. And so we know we're going to have to do some more things for really young kids than maybe we have to do for older kids, just because, as you mentioned, a first grader is, even though the first grader knows what we're talking about, their ability to remember all the time in the moment is a little less, we're a little less sure of that ability. And so we have to take that into account. And we will.
And then, yeah, and so is it using a mask to a level that's ineffective, or using another? And I just actually ordered her a face shield. I haven't even tried it yet. I just am trying to, I think every parent is in the same place of what do we do? And it's so hard. And I had one other question that I'm sure Tara is already very aware of, because I also, like other parents, I have the privilege of being able to provide transportation for my children, no problem. But anybody who has had a quote unquote walker at Rockwell understands that tiny little loop fills up very quickly and the traffic mounts very quickly. So I kind of am just reiterating it. I'm assuming it's already on the plate, and ideas are being fleshed out around that, of just what those drop off and pickup scenarios look like. Because on a regular, quote unquote normal day, it can be very intense of trying to maneuver in and out of that parking lot, or the drive through, I should say.
Right. I think we'll probably do the walker pickup in front. We're still working on a protocol, and we're gonna, as soon as we know when the buses will arrive, we'll separate it from the walkers. But we don't quite know that yet. So I'm guessing that first week of school might be a little hectic. We understand that there's a lot of space limitations, and as Dr. Brice said, he will get us a traffic detail. But I think after the first week, we'll be able to space the walkers and the bus pickups to two different 15-minute blocks.
So I think the other thing, having been at Rockwell, have seen the interactions, talked to different parents, Rockwell always concerns me just because of its size. Like, it's just not big enough to do what we really want to do, which is have a lane which is sectioned off that students could walk through. I think maybe that's one of the things that will get George Simmons and his team to look at whether or not there's a way to put in some structures, almost like some barriers, so that students could walk inside the barrier, so that cars would know, oh, there's a concrete barrier, I can't get there. And if that could happen on both sides, and then maybe with broader, brightly colored pedestrian crosswalks, that it may help us. It is something that again, I just think we need to be extra cautious about. I'm always concerned about the interaction between cars, walkers, buses. It is just not the mix that you ever want. And so we need to make sure that we take every precaution in the book.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your transparency and your communication, both you and Rockwell. I can't sing your praises enough.
Thank you. I see one more. It looks like we've got time to get one more question in before 8 o'clock. I see Steph Farrar.
Ferrara, it's me. Hi.
Hi, Kinley.
So I will be quick because I know there's only 4 minutes left and I'm like in a Zoom hold for the whole day today and I'm done as well. So thank you for everything you're doing, like everyone already said. My question is, I just want to reiterate because I kind of got confused after someone asked a question. Those parents that are choosing to do distance learning, like myself, I have an older child who will be in 8th grade who has a heart condition, so he will not be, I'm choosing to keep him home. That is an option for us, right? Regardless of what the district chooses as a whole, if we decide my first grader is also going to stay home, because why would I send her when I'm not sending my 8th grader because of health concerns?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The only thing, Steph, is it's not a district decision. The only decision is to offer distance learning as an option, and we offered it as an option, whether or not parents felt like their student had an underlying medical condition, or felt like this is what I want to do for right now, as we try to work through this.
And then I think the second part of my question, with my 3 minutes remaining, is that I myself, I feel like it's almost as a parent, I don't want to feel disconnected from school by choosing distance learning. You know, I'm involved with both PTOs, like I try to make myself available. So I know Tara's really good about, and Carla as the PTO president is like really good about making parents feel involved. So I know that the communication is going to have to really be open to families about like what's going on at school, and like, is there something I can still help with, even though my child's not actually attending school at both the middle school level. I know parent involvement is so difficult at the middle school level, but that's a topic for a different day. But at the elementary school, I just want to reiterate how important it is for the parents to still feel connected to the Rockwell community. I mean, it's one of the reasons why people live in this district is because of that small community. So just reiterating that as a parent, I just think that's really, really important for me, and that, you know, if there's ever anything at school. And then prematurely, I might be asking those that are choosing distance learning, there'll be some further guidance as we get closer to school starting, like on day 1 of school, like this is how you log it. Like, I don't know, I just feel like overwhelmed that I'm not prepared to do this. As much as I feel prepared, I don't feel prepared.
You know what? All right, so 2 things. One, I think the issue of communication, and I know Tara did a phenomenal job in the spring with communication. One of the things that we want parents to and students to feel the connection to school, whether you are physically there or not. right? And so you're still a part of the school community. Just because you don't show up every single day doesn't mean that you're not. And so we need to help folks with that. The other point that I think we really need to stress is, you know, this is going to be different for everybody. And we hadn't really thought about, but I wonder if we should have, it's almost like how to get prepared to start the 2020, the 2020, 21, you know, whatever school year.
Wherever we are.
Get ready, right? If your student's returning full-time all the time, what do you need? If you're returning on a hybrid schedule, what do you need? If you're returning and you're using distance learning, what do you need? I actually think that is a great idea, that if we share that with parents early enough, maybe no later than like August the 10th, that gives parents a good 3 weeks to think through all of the things that they're going to need, so that, you know, they have those things. That's something that we can put out. So that's a good reminder for us. All right, thank you. Tara, I'm seeing 8 o'clock. I don't know if there are any more questions. Just want to go through and see if anybody wants to raise their hand. Any more questions? If not, we're going to let Tara close us out.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everybody for showing. This is there were over 50, close to 60 people, and some of your names I saw on last night's school committee meeting as well. I know that's a lot of meetings, and a lot of sitting.
Tara, you had about 20 on the YouTube channel too.
Oh, so that's a very large amount of people to be here, and I hope that your questions were answered. I know Dr. Brice did an amazing job hitting all of those different things, and it's a work in progress. And I got some really great ideas tonight. For instance, I never really thought about what will our community activities look like next year. I don't know. So I do need lots of ideas and support. So if you have some ideas, you know, feel free to keep sending them to me and to Carla as well, and to all of us. As soon as we know more, you'll know more. We'll continue with our newsletters, our Sunday night newsletters, and trying to keep everybody connected and in place. There's lots of great ideas out there, and every day we hear something new that we try to put in place or try to see how feasible it is for us. I appreciate it, and I respect whatever choices you're making, and as soon as we know more, you'll know more as well. I look forward to hopefully seeing your kiddos in person or online, whichever way it works out. We miss them. I like to see kids every day. I don't always get a chance to anymore at this point. So I look forward to that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.
Good night.